The security guard at Meridian Technologies looked confused when I introduced myself. "You're here to see Lauren Hartman." He glanced at his computer screen, then back at me. "Sir, I just saw her husband about 20 minutes ago. He comes by all the time." I felt my smile freeze on my face. Her husband? Yeah, Mr. Sterling. Frank Sterling, the VP of Operations. The guard gestured toward the parking lot. "Actually, that's his car right there, the black Mercedes. He should still be upstairs if you want me to call up." I was holding a bag from Osteria, Lauren's favorite Italian place. 28 years of marriage, and I'd never once surprised her at work without calling first. Today, our anniversary week, I'd wanted to do something spontaneous. "You know what?" I heard myself say, voice steady despite the drumming in my chest, "I think I have the wrong day. I'll come back." The guard shrugged. "Want me to tell her you stopped by?" No. It's supposed to be a surprise." I walked back to my 10-year-old Honda, the one I kept driving because Lauren said we needed to be smart with money, that her CEO position came with scrutiny, that we couldn't look too extravagant. I didn't go home. Instead, I sat in a coffee shop 3 blocks away, watching my phone. At 6:47 p.m., it buzzed. "Working late again. Don't wait up. Love you." I stared at those last 2 words. Did she actually love me, or was I just the foundation she'd mentioned so many times, the steady, boring accountant husband who paid half the mortgage while she built something else entirely? "Okay," I typed back. "There's lasagna in the fridge." 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. "You're the best. See you late tonight." Her email loaded instantly. Thousands of messages arranged in neat folders: board communications, client relations, internal ops. I started with her calendar. At first glance, everything looked normal. Meetings, conference calls, site visits. But then I noticed the patterns hiding in plain sight. Dinner with F, 7 p.m. at Il Posto. That was 2 weeks ago. Il Posto was a romantic Italian restaurant in the West Loop. Candlelit tables, live piano, the kind of place where marriage proposals happened. Not where you discussed quarterly projections. Weekend retreat, Grand Geneva Resort. Last month. Lauren had told me it was a women's leadership conference. I pulled up the resort's website. Luxury suites starting at $450 a night. I found the charge on her corporate card: 1 room. Not 2. 1. I kept scrolling. More dinners. More trips. A pattern stretching back 3 years, all coded with plausible deniability. Business dinners. Corporate retreats. Team building exercises. Except Frank Sterling's name appeared on every single one. I opened her text messages next. Most were mundane, meeting confirmations, quick updates. But there was a thread with Frank that made my stomach drop. "Miss you already," he'd written after a business trip to San Francisco. "Tonight was perfect," Lauren had replied. "Same time next week." Always. There were hundreds of messages like this. Nothing explicitly sexual, but the intimacy was unmistakable. Inside jokes. Pet names. The easy shorthand of 2 people who'd built a world together. A world that didn't include me. I took screenshots of everything, my hands surprisingly steady. 22 years as an accountant had taught me that emotion clouds judgment. Evidence requires precision. I closed the laptop exactly as I'd found it and returned to bed. Lauren hadn't moved, still sleeping peacefully while I lay beside her, a stranger in my own marriage. The next morning, I called in sick to work. First time in 6 years. After Lauren left, kissing my forehead and telling me to feel better, I started the real investigation. I went through every drawer in her study, every file cabinet, every box in her closet. In the back of her jewelry drawer, hidden under a tangle of costume necklaces she never wore, I found a key. Just a silver apartment key attached to a keychain with an address, Harborview Apartments, Unit 214. Harborview was a luxury complex in River North. 30-story building, floor-to-ceiling windows, the kind of place where studios started at $3,200 a month. I'd driven past it dozens of times, never imagining my wife had a life inside. The parking garage had spaces marked with unit numbers. Space 214 held a black Mercedes GLE. Frank Sterling's car. My hands shook as I rode the elevator to the second floor. The key fit perfectly. The door opened. Inside was a fully furnished apartment. Not a temporary rental, a home. Hardwood floors, modern furniture, fresh flowers on the coffee table. The air smelled like Lauren's perfume, Chanel No. 5, the expensive one she saved for special occasions. Photos lined the mantel. Lauren and Frank at a beach. At a restaurant. On a hiking trail. In every single picture, Lauren wasn't wearing her wedding ring. I walked through the apartment in a daze. The kitchen had 2 sets of dishes, 2 coffee mugs on the counter. His and hers. The bedroom made me physically ill, a king-size bed with expensive linens, Lauren's clothes hanging in the closet next to Frank's suits, her shoes lined up beside his like they'd been living together for years. Like they were married. On the dresser, I found a folder labeled Future Plans in Lauren's distinctive handwriting. Inside were real estate listings. Houses in Evanston, Oak Park, Wilmette, all in the $800,000 to $1.2 million range. She'd circled several with notes in the margins, good schools nearby. Close to Frank's parents. Love the kitchen. Schools. They were planning for children. The children she'd told me she never wanted because they'd derail her career trajectory. There were travel brochures too. Santorini, Tokyo, New Zealand. Dream honeymoon destinations. And underneath all of that, legal documents. Divorce consultation summaries dated from 18 months ago. Lauren had met with 3 different attorneys, shopping for the best strategy. The notes were clinical, cold. Frame as irreconcilable differences. Cite Gerald's lack of ambition and emotional distance. Document instances of his failure to support career growth. She'd been building a case against me. Pages of examples followed. Times I'd undermined her by asking her to skip work events. Times I'd been emotionally unavailable by not wanting to discuss corporate politics at dinner. Times I'd shown lack of ambition by being content with my accounting job. Every normal marital friction point had been reframed as evidence of my inadequacy. The most recent note was dated 3 weeks ago. Timeline: file for divorce by January 2025. Finalized by June. Wedding with F by Christmas 2025. She had it all planned. Every detail. My replacement was already living with her part-time. Their future home was already picked out. I was just the obstacle she needed to remove. I photographed everything. Every page, every document, every photo. Then I sat on their couch, in their apartment, in their secret life, and tried to process the fact that my 28-year marriage had been a performance. The document that hurt most was titled, Gerald, Supporting Evidence. Subject shows persistent lack of professional ambition despite opportunities for advancement. Content with middle management position while spouse has achieved executive leadership. I'd turned down a promotion 2 years ago because it would have meant 60-hour weeks. Lauren had said she understood, that she made enough for both of us, that she valued having me home. She'd been documenting my decision as evidence of inadequacy. Subject demonstrates emotional unavailability and lack of interest in spouse's professional achievements. Frequently expresses preference for quiet nights at home over networking events essential to spouse's career. I liked quiet nights at home. I thought she did too. She'd always said the corporate events exhausted her, that coming home to me was her refuge. She'd been framing my love as neglect. Subject has made no effort to expand social circle or pursue personal growth. Relies entirely on spouse for intellectual stimulation and professional connections. My chest felt tight. Every moment of our marriage was being rewritten, twisted into something unrecognizable. I know many of you reading this have felt this, the moment you realize the story you thought you were living was actually something else entirely. If this resonates with you, please subscribe. This community exists because we've all been rewritten by someone else's narrative. Let's finish this story together. I went home and opened our financial statements. 22 years as an accountant had taught me exactly where to look. Our joint checking account showed consistent deposits, my $6,200 monthly after taxes, Lauren's roughly $18,000. Our expenses, mortgage, utilities, groceries, insurance, came to about $8,500 monthly. We should have been saving $15,700 a month. Over 3 years, that should have been over $565,000 in savings. Our savings account had $47,000. Where had over $500,000 gone? I pulled up Lauren's personal credit card, the one she claimed was for business expenses that got reimbursed. Harborview Apartments, $3,200 monthly. For 3 years. $115,200. Furniture purchases from West Elm, Pottery Barn, Crate and Barrel, $47,000. Travel charges to luxury destinations, $68,000. Fine dining, hundreds of charges at restaurants I'd never been to, $43,000. She'd been funding her entire secret life with our joint money. My money. While I'd been eating leftovers and driving a 10-year-old Honda Civic because she said we needed to be smart with our finances, she'd been playing house with Frank Sterling in a luxury apartment. But that wasn't all. I started examining Meridian Technologies' corporate filings. This was where my background really paid off. I knew how to read financial statements, how to spot irregularities, how to see the story behind the numbers. Lauren had been quietly restructuring the company without full board approval, moving resources into Frank's department, giving him control over key accounts, positioning him for a promotion to COO, a position that didn't exist yet. She was building him a golden ladder while making herself indispensable to his success. And she was violating her fiduciary duty to shareholders in the process. I spent 3 days building the case, barely sleeping, surviving on coffee and the methodical comfort of spreadsheets. Lauren had created a shell consulting company 18 months ago, Sterling Solutions LLC. On paper, it provided strategic advisory services to Meridian Technologies. In reality, it was a funnel. She'd approved $340,000 in consulting fees to a company that Frank Sterling secretly owned. The board minutes showed she'd never disclosed his ownership. That was textbook self-dealing. But it went deeper. She'd restructured 3 major client contracts, shifting them under Frank's division, inflating his department's revenue by 34% while making other divisions look underperforming. She was manufacturing his success story, preparing the narrative for his promotion. And she'd authorized stock options for him, 150,000 shares at a strike price that was criminally undervalued. When the company went public next year, as planned, those options would be worth roughly $4.2 million. She was quite literally buying his future with shareholder money. I compiled everything into a single document: financial statements, email threads, contract amendments, shell company registrations, SEC filings that showed the discrepancies. Then I did something I'd never done in 28 years of marriage. I looked up the board chairman's personal information. Richard Caldwell. 72 years old, retired from a Fortune 500 career, brought in specifically to prepare Meridian for its IPO. His reputation was built on integrity. He'd torpedoed 2 previous deals when he discovered executive misconduct. I found his email in an old company newsletter Lauren had left lying around. "Mr. Caldwell," I wrote. My name is Gerald Hartman. I'm Lauren Hartman's husband and a senior accountant with 22 years of experience in financial analysis. I have evidence of significant fiduciary misconduct involving the CEO and VP of operations. I believe you need to see this before the IPO proceeds. Would you be willing to meet? I hit send before I could second-guess myself. He responded within 2 hours. Tomorrow. 2 p.m. Your address. Richard Caldwell arrived exactly at 2 p.m., carrying a leather portfolio and wearing the expression of a man who'd seen every corporate scandal imaginable. Mr. Hartman. His handshake was firm. I appreciate you reaching out directly. I'd cleaned the house, made coffee, arranged my evidence across the dining room table like a murder board. Bank statements. Corporate filings. Photos from the apartment. Lauren's divorce strategy documents. I need you to understand something first, I said. This is personal for me. Lauren is my wife. But the financial misconduct is real, and it's going to destroy your IPO if it comes out after the fact. Caldwell sat down, his eyes already scanning the documents. Walk me through it. I did. 30 minutes of methodical accounting, showing him the shell company, the stock options, the contract restructuring. I showed him the apartment lease paid through corporate funds coded as executive housing. I showed him the timeline of Lauren's divorce planning synchronized with Frank's planned promotion. They were going to wait until after the IPO, I said. Let the stock price stabilize, cash out their options, then announce their relationship as a new development. Clean narrative. No scandal. Caldwell's jaw tightened. And the divorce? She was going to file in January. Frame me as an anchor holding her back. The board would sympathize, brilliant CEO finally leaving her unambitious husband. It would actually make her look good. Dedicated to her work even through personal turmoil. Except she's been embezzling and committing securities fraud. Yes. He was quiet for a long time, reviewing the USB drive I'd prepared. This is thorough, Gerald. Almost too thorough. You could have taken this to the SEC, triggered an investigation, probably gotten a whistleblower settlement. I don't want money, I said. I want the truth on record. Caldwell nodded slowly. You'll have it. Emergency board meeting, tomorrow morning. I'll need you available to testify if required. I'll be here. Lauren came home at 6:30 p.m., earlier than usual. I was in the kitchen, making dinner like it was any other Wednesday. Hey, she said, but her voice was different. Uncertain. Hey. Richard Caldwell called me an hour ago. Emergency board meeting tomorrow morning. He wouldn't say what it's about. She set her bag down slowly. Do you know anything about this? I turned to face her. 28 years of marriage, and I'd never seen her look afraid. I know everything, Lauren. The color drained from her face. I pulled out my phone, opened the photos. The apartment. Her and Frank on the couch I'd sat on. The divorce documents. The financial statements. Harborview Apartments, Unit 214. $3,200 a month for 3 years. Paid from our joint account while you told me we needed to be careful with money. Her mouth opened. Closed. Gerald. Sterling Solutions LLC. Owned by Frank, paid by Meridian Technologies. $340,000 in fraudulent consulting fees. You went through my private. Your laptop password is our wedding date, Lauren. Our wedding date. You want to know what's funny? You kept that password while planning to divorce me. While building a case that I'm emotionally distant and unambitious. While stealing $250,000 to play house with your VP. She sat down heavily. I can explain. Richard Caldwell has everything. The board meets tomorrow at 9 a.m. The SEC will have it by Friday. Your IPO is dead, your career is over, and Frank's going down with you. Tears started down her face. Real ones, I thought. Or maybe I just didn't know anymore. I loved you, she whispered. No, I said quietly. You loved what I provided. Stability. Foundation. The boring husband who'd never question why his brilliant wife worked late every night. I handed her an envelope. Divorce papers, filed that morning. You can stay somewhere else tonight. I'm sure Frank's apartment is available. 3 years later, I woke up to sunlight streaming through windows I'd picked myself. The condo was smaller than the house I'd shared with Lauren, but it was mine. Paid for with my half of our assets, after the legal fees, after the settlements, after everything came out. Amy was already awake, reading on the couch with her coffee. She worked as a librarian, made half what I did, and had never once asked me to be anything other than exactly who I was. Morning, she said, smiling. Morning. We'd met at a divorce support group 18 months ago. She'd been there after discovering her ex-husband had a gambling addiction he'd hidden for 5 years. We'd started talking about trust, about rebuilding, about how some betrayals actually set you free. I checked my phone out of habit. There was a news alert about Meridian Technologies. The company had been sold for parts after the failed IPO, the remnants absorbed by a larger competitor. I'd heard through former colleagues that Lauren was working as a consultant now, her CEO career over at 47. The SEC investigation had resulted in fines but no jail time. She and Frank had broken up within 6 months of the scandal, the relationship collapsing under the weight of everything they'd lost. I didn't feel triumph. Just a quiet sense of closure. You okay? Amy asked. Yeah, I said. And I meant it. The boring accountant who'd been framed as emotionally distant and unambitious had done exactly what he was good at. He'd followed the money, documented the truth, and let the numbers speak for themselves. Sometimes the truth is enough. Sometimes being steady and methodical isn't boring, it's exactly what justice requires. If you've been rewritten by someone else's lies, if you've ever discovered that your story wasn't what you thought it was, please subscribe. This community exists because we know that truth matters, even when it costs everything. Share your story in the comments, you're not alone in this.